welcome back to the So Cute Runner series, this time for July. And just like we've been doing for the other projects in our series, we get to do some patchwork on both ends and just the perfect amount of applique. As always, these shapes are perfectly cut out, one layer at a time, slowly, carefully, prefuse and laser cut applique, meaning these shapes, you don't have to trace those. You don't have to cut those, and no matter how careful I am trying to cut around circles of applique shapes, it's never that beautiful, perfect arc, right? It's human error, it just is. So I love that that's already done. We can focus on fun. Kits are the way to go. You're getting these exact fabrics. You'll also be getting your binding, your backing. We already talked about the laser shapes and a well-tested full color pattern. So I'm going to jump right in. We'll be talking about notions as we go. In addition to everything I just said, we're including one of our newest products inside your kit, and it's called the HST Perfect Papers. And we'll be talking about those here in just a moment, about what is that and why'd you put it in my kit. And we're not even charging more for this kit. We're just including it. It's so cool. Half square triangles, which is what this is right here. Those are half square triangles. You'll see them in many quilt blocks. Right now, they're just kind of in these four corners, but when you put four of these in combination in a certain orientation, they're a pinwheel. They're in lots and lots of quilt blocks, and we have the HST Perfect Papers in a variety of sizes, so be sure to check that out. But let's just dive into unpacking this block, and then we're going to take you through making it. In the middle, you see that we have actually was a square, and we just did a sew and flip technique on those four corners. We're going to step through that. We're going to be using our HST Perfect papers that are now in your kit. You can always pick them up or choose a traditional method of making half square triangles if you're going to be just picking up the pattern and using your own fabric. And then we're going to be talking about the fast flying geese technique that pretty much everyone is adopting now. I'm hearing more and more people are like, of course I make my flying geese that way, the fast flying geese. And it's made even more precise with the Ultimate Flying Geese Tool, which I'll be touching on as well. That's our goal here, is to share with you how does the Shabby Maker team actually make these blocks. What I'm showing you has come right to me from that team, and they emphasize things as they go, oh, that was important. Make sure you mention that, Jen. So this is them talking through me to you. So let's open up our pattern, full color. Of course, identify your fabrics, add some sizing, give a good press. We all know that precise patchwork starts with good clean cuts. So if it's been a while since you changed the blade, just pick up a pack when you pick up your kit of the refill blades. If you're a midnight maker like I am, and I'm sewing well into the night, and that blade's getting duller and duller, and I don't have a replacement blade, I just keep pushing harder. Why do we do this? I do not know. Just grab those and put those in your sewing room so you can change that blade morning, noon, or night as needed. All right, in the very beginning of our pattern, we talk you through how to make the half square triangles, and we're going to give you the option. This here is the traditional way to make half square triangles. We just kind of threw together a quick little review of that. We'll talk about the HST after that. The traditional way to make half square triangles, which is what we're not going to be doing because we've given you the HST Perfect papers that makes 8 of these at a time. It's incredible. But this is the way we all learned. 2 fabrics, right? We draw the line diagonal to diagonal, right side together, pin, pin, sew 1/4 of an inch on either side. Here, we actually did that. I erased that line in the middle there, cut it in half. This is an oversized technique, squared up to 2 inches, but we're only making 2 at a time. You got to keep doing that 3 more times. That's why we've included the HST Perfect papers. They solve problems, and that need to square up, while it's a great option so your block ends up the perfect size, it's a chore. This is why we created the HST Perfect papers. How do they work? First thing we'll do is your instructions are on your sheet. The one thing I want to call your attention to, and that is on this size and all of the sizes of our papers. This is a finished size. Notice over here, this said, my little sticker, my reminder sticker, square to 2 inches. Notice that's an unfinished block. But we all know that when we sew 1/4 inch all the way around and sew that actually into our quilt block here, this finishes, this trims up to 2 and finishes to 1.5. So please keep that in mind, that these are finished sizes, and that's what we care about, right? It's finished sizes. Okay, so we know we've got the right piece of paper. Shorten stitch length to 1.5 millimeters, so I would draw that back. That makes sense. We know we're going to want to perforate this paper. Everywhere we see a dashed line, we're stitching. Everywhere we see a solid line, we're cutting. So having that shortened stitch length adds more strength and stability and helps perforate the paper. It does 2 jobs. All right, we're going to layer 2 fabrics that are 5.5 inch squares right side together. So since we know that these are our 2 fabrics for our half square triangles, we have those, and we're simply going to place those right side together. Pin paper on top. Okay, and we're going to pin, and make sure your pins are not extending into the dashed line where you're going to be sewing. So as I pin, I'm really focused on making sure I'm staying out of the way of my presser foot. Oh, I shifted just a touch. Let me scoot back over there in the middle of that thing. Let me get over there. So there's no need to stop. There's no need to pin across that dash line. So you get the idea, just to pin wherever you won't be sewing. Okay. Once we've done that, our next instruction, sew on the dash line, cut on the solid lines. Just to save us time, we've already, you can see that, I don't know if you can from the upper, we've already just sewn on those lines. So I just go to my machine, so here, stop, or turn around and come back, cut my thread, come here, sew, turn around and come back, okay? Once we've already done our sewing, now we follow that instruction. We literally cut on every single solid line, and what you see now is what you get. Be very careful, definitely use your rotary cutter and a ruler as you would expect, and we're cutting precisely on that line. Now, because we know that these are 1.5 inch papers finished, we know that once we extract these half square triangles out of here, all 8 of them, those will measure 2 inches because they have not been sewn in. They're not finished. So the order in which you cut the paper does not matter. You just need to make sure if you see a solid line, you're cutting on it. Now I'm going to extract I'll extract a few of these out of here, and we'll remove the paper and we'll do a measurement check, okay? So you can see, unlike the traditional technique of a slightly oversized half square triangle where you have to square it up later, every single one of them, there is no squaring up. This is what they mean. They're perfect. Okay. So we're going to remove our papers. On the back of our block, and I'll show you, we press toward the red, but your pattern will tell you, and we can see we did press to the red, so we'll do the same. Now, since our papers said this will be a finished 1.5 inch unit, this right now should measure 2 inches. Let's just take that measurement check. So let's find the 2 inches right here on our creative grid. And let's look at that. That's 2 inches and that's 2 inches. Let me do that from above so you can see that clearly. There's no squaring up. time savings, accuracy, all things that makers are looking for. And here's the other cool thing. With one sheet of paper, those two fabrics, we have 8 half square triangles. That and that done in one fell swoop. Move on. Let's move on. That's why the HST Perfect Papers, why we just wanted to put that in your kit. If you're going to be, to try them, and if you're going to be just picking up the pattern and want to sew from home with your own fabric, we love that. We'd love for you to just pick up a pad of these. It's such a great scrap buster, right? We all have pieces of fabric left over, like what do we do with this? A great way to use up scrap fabric. We're just making half square triangles, all right? Sew them together or make pinwheels. All right, that is how to make half square triangles. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna actually clean this up and we'll move on to how to make flying geese with incredible efficiency. We'll be making 4 at a time, so we'll have to repeat that because as you can see, each block uses those 4. So what I'm going to be showing you, we'll be repeating one more time, and then you'll have all the flying geese you need to make both blocks. Because remember, back in the day, we made 1 flying geese unit at a time, and its accuracy was inconsistent. Those days are done. It's such better techniques today. Let me get cleaned up, and I'll be right back and walk you through that process. For making the flying geese units, this is such a cool technique. We'll have 1 larger square, which will be our A fabric, and then we end up having 4 of the smaller squares, which in this case happen to be this kind of blue floral here. So we're going to start off with exactly what's shown, where we have 2 of the squares in opposite corners. Now the way we all learn to do kind of sewing a 1/4 inch on either side here of a diagonal is you draw the diagonal and you track a 1/4 inch to the left and right. And that's what we show you here in this pattern. That is the way we all learned. That is what our patterns show, because we never want to require you to buy a ruler that we just prefer, that maybe isn't required to do a project. There are certain projects we have that are dependent on a certain specialty creative grid tool. What I'm referring to here is the seam guide. We no longer draw that line from corner to corner and try to track left and try to track right by a 1/4 inch, because Creative Grid created what we think is a really helpful tool, and this is why I'm pointing it out to you, where we just simply set this corner to corner diagonally, and with our friction pen, we draw on either side. Why are we doing that? Because, and I've said it so many times, I'm gonna say it again, we're more accurate, you're more accurate sewing on a drawn line than reliably tracking a 1/4 inch away from a line that was drawn diagonal to diagonal. But however you want to do this, maybe again you're at home, or maybe you don't want to buy that seam guide, that's fine. You will draw that line diagonal to diagonal, and you need to track a 1/4 inch to the left and a 1/4 inch to the right. We opted to do the Creative Grid seam guide there, and so on our lines, and even before we sewed, I want to point out something else our team has done, and I did not do it this way until they showed me. I used to take this to my sewing machine. I was clearly pinned, of course we always pin, just like that, making sure nothing's moving, of course. I've learned that lesson too many times. If you don't pin and you think you're going to hold everything still, most of the time I just end up seam ripping. At this point, I used to just go sew. Here's what the team upstairs does. Do you notice this gap in the middle? What's that? They feel that that overlap right there of that bulk and that bulk isn't doing us any good, and they're right. So this is not really in any of the patterns. This is just something we do, and why you watch our videos is we just reach underneath, making sure we're not cutting that white fabric, but rather just cutting those 2 blues, and we're getting rid of that little bit of that gap in that overlap. And I could have probably cut that a little more precisely, but that's just kind of a bonus. There's no extra fabric in there, only what's needed. Once you have that sewn, now as you'd suspect, we will take our straight edge and lay that corner to corner and cut. So now we will have 2 halves. So thus far, we've used our 1 square and 2 of our blue smaller squares. And from this, we're going to press to the outside. Just like this. Remember that we have 2 more of those blue squares. And the step I'm showing you here, we will repeat with this other fabric. Placing this in the corner, pin, pin. Notice those 2 lines are jetting right up that valley there. Put another one here, pin, pin, sew on the line. And I'll just be making 1 set with you just to save the time. Just like this, okay? And just like we did, we're going to cut on that diagonal. And once again, pressing away. This is an oversized Flying Geese unit. Oversized is a lovely thing because there's grace there, right? When we get to trim something up to the exact size, that means you don't have to be perfect getting into at this stage, which I like. Now, let me get that warming all the way up here. In our pattern here, this is telling us that we need to now trim this unit up. We love using the Ultimate Flying Geese tool because I don't have to now analyze a standard ruler or even a smaller ruler like this to go, okay, if I now have to, we're saying it, trim each Flying Geese unit to 2 by 3.5. Can that be done with a regular ruler? Yes, but there's room for error here, right? So we'd have to go, okay, 2 is this way, 3.5 is this way. Where are we starting with this, right? Are we starting that height this way? Where do you cut? How do you cut? So I would be now trying to be like, okay, I know this X right there, that's something, right? And where those cross, and that's my 1/4 inch. And I think that I would probably start here. This is how I would realistically do this. Then I would go, okay, that's got to be 2. So I'm going to go 2 from the top. And this is what I did do before someone said, why are you doing it like that? Have you not seen the Ultimate Flying Geese tool? And I said, what are you talking about? That was many years ago. I no longer do this, but I'm going to show you the exercise of what I would do. I cannot promise the results right now. It's been a long time since I've taken this approach. So we've got the 2, but what about that 3.5? Half of 3.5 is 1.75. So you'd be measuring from that point over this way, 1.75. Probably about in here. And then going, okay, the whole thing is 3.5. So I'd be turning it around like this. This would be my approach. And I think we got there. Pretty good. I'm a little bit chunky on this side, not comfortable. Okay, let's talk about, let's not do that. Let's try to avoid that. What's the option then, Jen? If we're not doing that, what are we doing? This is where the Ultimate Flying Geese is worth its weight in gold. It is in so many projects that we design with, and it makes 8 incredible sizes. There's also a new Ultimate Flying Geese Tool 2, TWO. That is not the one we're using today. Please don't buy that for this project. That's going to give you the wrong sizes. It gives you 8 different sizes, but that's for a different project. Here, it says in our pattern, if using the Creative Grid tools, use the line mark C. That's us, right there. Notice it says for letter C, finish size 1.5 by 3. Look in our pattern, right? Finish size 1.5 by 3. Well, we already know that 1.5 by 3 is 2 by 3.5 unfinished. That letter C is going to happen right now with this trim function. There's 2 trim functions, and here we go. This is why this tool is easily one of the top selling tools at Creative Grid. There's 2 trim functions. Look at this beautiful line right here. This is letter C. This is the block that we're going to use the tool to trim up with. Notice the right side and the top are exposed so that I can trim them. Keep turning this mat one more rotation. Now up top here is a trim to function. We're still letter C. I'm just dropping that right into that V. I have this line up, this line up. I'm going to trim, I'm going to trim. It's perfect. It's perfect every time. With that one square, the larger white square, and those 4 blue, in a matter of minutes, we have 4 perfect Flying Geese units without the stress of, okay, what's half of 3.5? Not everyone's good at math, and that's okay. You know, we're good at sewing. That's okay. Sometimes the right answer is not actually putting more fabric in your cart, it's putting the right tool in your cart. I made that mistake for far too long. I had reams of fabric and 1 ruler. What was I thinking? I did not realize how important, how much value, especially specialty tools like this, can add to the precision speed of our block. So obviously you can hear I feel very strongly about this particular tool. It's well engineered, does a phenomenal job every single time. That step we took of the 1 square and the 4 blue will get you the 4 Flying Geese you need for the 1 unit. Repeat that again until you have enough for this second block. Okay, let me get that cleaned up, and let's talk about the center here of the square and our sew and flip technique, and then it's kind of bringing the whole block together. I'll be right back. For the center portion here, it's kind of a square and a square, as we call it. I just grabbed for my Creative Grid 3.5, perfectly cut my center. If you don't want to pick up that tool, that's fine. I do a lot of 3.5-inch squares, so I just grab that. Cut a 3.5-inch square, and you'll have 4 of the smaller squares cut. And we're going to be drawing the line on the back diagonal to diagonal. This is not the time now to use that seam guide I showed you before. That's only when you're going to be tracking left or right of a drawn line. Here we're going to be sewing on that line, okay? In opposite corners, we're simply going to sew directly on that line. Press to the outside. I press to the outside before I trim, just to make sure nothing got cattywampus. Every now and again that happens where something gets a little askew, and I've learned my lesson to not trim before I check and go, that looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and trim that. So I just lay my dashed line of my really of the Creative Grid tools to trim off that excess. And then, just as you would suspect, in the opposite corners here, I'll just use those 2. We're placing this again, sewing on the line, and once again pressing to the outside. So that is such a simple little block there. But that is a really reliable way to do square and square. let me tell you why we chose that technique. We are trimming a little bit of fabric away, but the way that some people teach square into square is they actually take a slightly bigger piece of this and they cut it on the diagonal, which you immediately have bias. And they're cutting this on the diagonal. And this is the most stable way, beginner-friendly way to be able to make a square in a square. There are lots of techniques out there. This is the one we've adopted because we're looking for accuracy and fun. And this is not like it's an excess amount of fabric that is being trimmed away. So that is the method we prefer, just because we're never really dealing with bias, which can be problematic, especially in a precise patchwork block. You have to be very, very careful. Okay, so now we have the center of our block, right? And we have some of these elements here that I can share with you that we've kind of sewn in advance. And that's just kind of, let me just lay out an upper portion so you're kind of seeing how this would work, right? We're just laying out parts of this, making sure everything's moving in the right direction. And of course, we know we'd have our Flying Geese units out here. And this is kind of what I already have. So let me show you one technique here of, okay, I'm going to be sewing a Flying Geese unit to both sides. Let's just ignore that top row for the moment. Here, how are we getting all this lined up? This is what I recommend. On this side, do you see how these cross like that? Right there, that spot, that's where the needle should pass, or just to the breadth of to the right of that. So as I position this together, I'm going to pin in this corner. And we're going to actually sew this. I want to sew this with you. I want to sew this to show you how being very intentional about that point, and I'm looking at that point when I'm sewing, and making sure these fabrics are stacked top to bottom, and then we're definitely going to be pressing that seam open. I've got that iron full hot. Let's go ahead and sew that. I'm going to have my seam guide help me be very accurate about that, but this is where I'm looking as I approach. It's that part right there. Okay, so that's the part we care about, right? Let's look at that. See how those points came out perfectly? It's not luck, it's just making sure that one was stacked to the other. Remember, we used our ultimate Flying Geese tool to bring that Flying Geese unit into just perfection, right? It makes it all work. And that's the whole point, is it all works. When the ingredients are all accurate, when you bring the ingredients together, the block will be accurate. Now, you still need to sew an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's very important. But the ingredients going into that are so important. We can't have imperfect elements and expect a perfect block in the end. Doesn't work, right? So I'm pressing that seam open. That is also why I have that clapper here, to just press that seam open. So I'm going to let that happen. And as you can imagine here, right, we're going to be doing the Flying Geese unit on the opposite side. So that's how you're going to get your center portion together. Going back up to the upper portion where we have this out here, we're simply placing these right side together. And look how we have interlocking seams. That seam's going this way, that seam's going this way. Here, I'm pinning right up there. So I don't have to remove that pin, sewing a 1/4 inch, and same on this side. And in our instructions, that's also having us press our seams open. So let's look at the back of that block. Lots of seams pressed open to distribute the bulk so the block lays flat. And look what a great job that clapper did. That seam's not trying to close up on me. I was a late adopter of clappers, not anymore. I see the value of that because now later on when we want to sew everything together, I don't have a seam that's lopsided here. It's good and flat, the block lays flat. Everything happens better when the block lays flat. So you can see here, once we get our other rows put together, we would have our top, press that one open, of course. You can do that real quick. You can see how this just comes together. Just comes together. But so much of this really is about the different elements just being focused on when you're making the half square triangle units, then making the flying geese units, then making the square and square, and then of course bringing this all together. When we bring that all together, let's talk about pinning right here. I'm not going to just place this right side together and pin left to right. No. What I want to do is make sure, look how that's stacked right on top of each other. Just like that. Pin on this side. Don't pin out here. Pin on the inside. These are the Clover Extra Fine Patchwork pins. They are a difference maker. So sharp, made in Japan. They have a glass head on there. So if you accidentally touch that with the iron, it's not melting. Ask me why I know that, because I had some cheap, cute pins, but the head of the pin was plastic and I accidentally didn't realize I had a pin left in, and that iron melted that pink plastic onto my quilt block that never came out. So guess what? I had to remake that section. But this is how I would pin this block right here. Okay, and over here. I did not and do not just pin left to right and pray and hope it's going to work. Very intentional. We all want these points coming together. And when you pin intentionally, you will get that. And then of course, once you have all of these top and bottom rows sewn to the middle, now we're pressing everything open. You saw that. And then we're off to adding our side borders, our top border, and you'll be making 2 of those blocks. For the applique, you've been seeing me do this. No one necessarily enjoys having to cut perfect scallops, trace perfect scallops, but they're sure fun to work with when they've already been cut out for you. So just a reminder, I still see people struggling to remove the paper. With the paper side up of your applique shape, I want you to give it a good crease, just like that. Notice once I do that, the paper releases. You're not going to hurt the fabric. The way people hurt the fabric is they start digging in there, or they try to use a pin, and they end up fraying or snagging the fabric. So just give it a good firm crease and that paper will release. And of course you can see the diagram here, right? Very simple, get your light source out. Love the Appliqué or the Taillight light pad that's often used with the Appliqué mat. We don't need to be using the Appliqué mat here because there's no overlapping applique. It's just like turning the lights on, literally, right? Position everything in place, put all your stars where you want them to be, move everything over. Remember, you're using a medium heat. Once all those shapes are down, you have a choice. We actually wait until we have added our borders. We even add our Cali-Del fusible fleece to the back and our backing, and then we go and stitch down our applique shapes, and that's what gives that an embossed look, and we did our scallop there too. If your machine, maybe you're on a lighter weight machine, you're not comfortable doing that, and you want to stitch those shapes down now before you add in the 2 blocks on the other end, that's fine. Whatever you prefer, but that's the thread set of what we chose to match with these beautiful fabrics. So this has been a really fun series. If you've got that perfect entryway table, maybe a table behind the couch where a normal long runner is just too long, that's me. I have 2 of those in my house actually. 2 spots that need shapes just like this. It's the perfect size. Head to the Shabby site and get the kit. Let your friends know this is the place for inspiration, education, and so much more. And be sure to pick up the other kits in the series, and I look forward to seeing you next month as we continue the So Cute Runner series for August.